room was loud, full of confident voices and quiet tension. The kind of place where respect wasn't given. It was felt. Every seat was taken except one. Not just any seat. His seat. People glanced at it without daring to move closer, like it carried an invisible warning. Then, out of nowhere, a stranger walked in, calm, unaware, or maybe just careless. Without hesitation, he sat down right there. A few people froze. Others looked away. Someone whispered. And then, the door opened. Footsteps echoed. In just 5 seconds, the entire room shifted. Conversations died. Eyes widened, and one by one, everyone stood up. He didn't know. That was the only explanation people could come up with as they watched him casually lean back, completely unaware of the silent storm forming around him. The chair he had taken wasn't marked, wasn't labeled, but everyone in that room understood its weight. It wasn't about ownership, it was about presence, about a reputation built so deeply that even absence commanded respect. A few men exchanged glances, debating whether to say something, but no one moved. Because stepping in meant stepping into something bigger than a simple correction. The stranger crossed one leg over the other, relaxed, even confident. Maybe he thought the silence around him was admiration. Maybe he assumed people were intimidated by him, but the truth was far different. The silence wasn't about him at all, it was about what was coming. Near the back, someone subtly shook their head, almost in disbelief. Another quietly stood up and moved aside, creating space without saying a word. It was like a ripple effect, subtle but undeniable. Then the atmosphere changed. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough for those who understood to feel it instantly. The door didn't slam, no grand entrance was made, but the shift in energy was immediate. Conversations cut mid-sentence. The air tightened, people straightened, their posture without thinking, as if their bodies reacted before their minds could catch up. Respect wasn't requested, it was automatic. The stranger noticed it too, but too late. His eyes moved around the room, confusion slowly replacing his confidence. Why was everyone standing? Why had the energy flipped so suddenly? He uncrossed his leg, his posture stiffening as awareness crept in. Something wasn't right. Something about where he was sitting. Something about what he had unknowingly stepped into. A figure moved forward, not rushed, not aggressive, just steady. Every step carried a quiet authority that didn't need explanation. No one spoke. No one dared interrupt the moment. It wasn't fear in the room. It was recognition. The kind that comes from witnessing someone whose presence alone sets the tone. The stranger stood up abruptly now, the realization finally hitting him. He stepped back, almost instinctively, giving space without being told. No confrontation happened. No words were exchanged. And yet, the message was louder than anything that could have been said. He heard it before he understood it. The faint shift in the room like a warning carried in silence. The stranger had barely settled into the seat when the atmosphere around him began to change. At first it was subtle. A conversation nearby cut short. A man who had been laughing moments ago suddenly went quiet. Eyes started to move, not toward the stranger, but past him, toward the entrance, toward something that hadn't even fully appeared yet. The stranger didn't notice, not immediately. He adjusted his position, leaned back slightly, owning the space as if it belonged to him. Maybe in his world it did. Maybe he was used to walking into places and being the center of attention. But this room wasn't like the others. This room had rules that were never spoken, respect that was never demanded, and a hierarchy that didn't need explanation. A man standing near the wall took a slow step back. Another straightened his jacket. It wasn't panic. It wasn't fear. It was alignment. As if everyone was instinctively preparing for something inevitable. The stranger glanced around, catching fragments of this behavior, but his mind couldn't piece it together fast enough. To him, it felt strange, but not alarming. Not yet. Then the sound of footsteps entered the room. They weren't loud. They didn't need to be. Each step carried a rhythm, calm and controlled, like someone who didn't rush because nothing in the world could rush him. The energy followed those steps, spreading across the room like an invisible wave. And just like that, everything changed. One man stood up, then another, and another. No one gave a signal. No one said a word. Yet within seconds, the entire room was on their feet. It wasn't synchronized, but it felt unified, like a shared understanding that didn't require communication. Chairs shifted quietly, eyes lowered slightly. The air itself seemed to tighten with respect. Now the stranger felt it. Confusion hit first. His brows furrowed as he looked around, trying to make sense of what was happening. Why was everyone standing? Who had walked in? His heart rate picked up, not out of fear, but out of uncertainty. He turned slightly in his seat, trying to catch a glimpse of the person behind him, but the angle didn't reveal much. Only silhouettes, only reactions. That's when instinct kicked in. He slowly uncrossed his legs. His posture, once relaxed, became rigid. His hands, which had been resting casually, now pressed against the seat as if preparing to move. Something deep inside him, something primal, was telling him he had made a mistake he didn't yet fully understand, but one he could feel in every pair of eyes around him. The footsteps stopped, right behind him. The room fell into a deeper silence, the kind that feels heavier than noise. The stranger swallowed, his throat suddenly dry. He didn't need to turn around to know that whoever had entered was meant to be here. That the seat he had taken was never just a seat. The silence didn't break. It deepened. The kind of silence that doesn't just fill a room but presses against it. By now, everyone was standing. Not stiff, not fearful, but alert, aware. Their eyes weren't wandering anymore. They were fixed, respectful, almost disciplined. Whatever presence had entered didn't need introduction. It was already understood. The stranger could feel it in his chest now. That quiet pressure, that invisible weight. He slowly pushed himself up from the seat, not out of politeness, but instinct. The kind that tells you when you've stepped into something you don't control. His movements were no longer confident. They were careful, measured, like someone trying not to make a wrong move in a place where every move suddenly mattered. He stepped aside. No one told him to. No one gestured. And yet, it felt like the only possible decision. The space he had occupied was now empty again, but not for long. A figure moved forward, calm and steady. No rush, no need. Every step carried the same quiet certainty, like time itself adjusted to match his pace. There was no anger on his face, no visible reaction to what had just happened, and somehow, that made everything even more intense. Because this wasn't about confrontation. It was about presence, the kind of presence that doesn't react, because it doesn't have to. As he approached the seat, the room seemed to hold its breath, not in fear but in anticipation. Not of what he would do, but of what he wouldn't need to do. That's what made it powerful. There were no guards stepping in, no voices raising, no scene being made. Just a silent understanding shared by everyone present. The stranger lowered his gaze slightly, not fully, not dramatically, just enough to show that he understood now, understood where he was, understood who had walked in, understood the weight of the moment he had unknowingly stepped into. His earlier confidence had dissolved, not shattered, just quietly replaced by awareness. The figure reached the seat, paused. For a fraction of a second, nothing moved. It wasn't hesitation. It was acknowledgement of the space, of the moment, of the unspoken respect that had filled the room before he even arrived. Then he sat down, and just like that, the tension released. Not instantly, not loudly, but gradually. Shoulders relaxed, eyes softened. The room exhaled. One by one, people began to sit again, returning to their places, but something had shifted. Something subtle, yet permanent. Because moments like that don't just pass, they stay. They settle into memory. The stranger remained standing for a second longer than everyone else, not because he was told to, but because he needed to.